Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second day of the 5th Annual Vibrant Living Expo and Culinary Showcase. You all having a good time? Yeah. All right, that's great. And I know that our friends who are streaming online are having a great time too, because we are flooded with thank yous online. So it's really exciting to be able to share this with the world. So what you are seeing right now is what they are seeing live online. It's a very, very exciting time that we can share this with the world. And it's just really kind of emotionally overwhelming to me to be able to spread this so far and wide. And you're all a part of it, so it's really exciting. This morning I'm going to be introducing our next presenter, our next culinary artist here, Jenifer Cornbleet. But first I have a couple of announcements for you. Please remember that tonight is our big event at Cotton Auditorium. Don't miss it, because it is really the highlight of the weekend. And do go early. About 6:15 is the time that the doors will open. It will be a great opportunity for you to mix and meet people and network, and also take advantage of our unbaked sale. All those great desserts that our pastry arts graduates made especially for you. And it will be a fundraiser for our chef scholarship program. So it's going to be a great evening. Bring your books if you already have books by John Robbins, Howard Lyman, Will Tuttle, or myself, because we'll have a book signing after the event is over. And there is a map in your program guide that will tell you where to find it. It's really very close and easy to find. Also, today will be the last full day for raffle sales, and also for the silent auction. We'll be drawing the winning raffle tickets this evening at Cotton Auditorium, and tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock we'll end the silent auction. So do go into event headquarters, which is located in administration, and see all of the great things that have been donated, including a dehydrator by Excalibur, courses by Living Light, Culinary Arts Institute, and many really great prizes. So take a look at them. They're at bargain basement prices. So do go and look at that. And of course, the raffle tickets are only $5 a piece, or 5 for $20. So I'd now like to introduce to you a colleague of mine, a very dear friend, somebody that has been with Living Light for about 9 years or so, I'm going to guess. Jenifer Cornbleet is an instructor, an internationally acclaimed author. Her book, Raw Food Made Easy for One or Two People, has sold over 100,000 copies. And that is pretty phenomenal. She has a brand new book out now called Raw for Dessert. She teaches classes all over the country, including right here at Living Light Culinary Arts Institute. She's on our faculty and teaches she's a master teacher of teachers and teaches at our instructor course. So please do help me welcome the great chef, Jenifer Cornbleet.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you so much for coming, everybody, to learn today how to indulge your sweet tooth and enjoy the most decadent treats you can imagine simply by going raw for dessert. My name is Jenifer Cornbleet, and as Sherry mentioned, I'm the author of Raw Food Made Easy for One or Two People. And I wrote this book 4 years ago in order to make things a lot easier. Every recipe in there takes under 30 minutes. You don't need fancy equipment or exotic ingredients, so I'm really into making things easy. And in the years since the book has come out, I've been noticing there's raw food restaurants popping up all over the country. It's getting so much more popular. And as I've been eating at some of these different raw food restaurants, I was so impressed by how great the desserts are getting. Also eating the desserts here, I mean, just everywhere I've been just seeing more and more amazing raw desserts. And 10 years ago, I mean, I remember you were lucky if you could get a date almond ball or something like that, you know, at a juice bar or something. But suddenly there's just been this explosion of amazing desserts. So as I was eating at those restaurants, I started to wonder, well, could all of my favorite desserts be made raw? Because I really do have a sweet tooth. And could they be simplified so that even home cooks could do it? You don't need to be a 5-star restaurant person to make these. So that was really my goal with Raw for Dessert. And the answer is yes, all of your favorite desserts can be made really easily and quickly, and they're just as delicious as what you can get in the restaurants. So what I want to do today is take you on a culinary tour through this magical world. And I think of raw desserts as a magical world because you don't have to be a master baker or a pastry chef in order to make sensational raw cakes, pies, tarts, crisps, ice creams, custards, and candies. All of these treats can be made really easily with little more than simple kitchen pantry ingredients and basic equipment. So I'm going to be talking about all those different kinds of things that you can do. And then we're going to finish the demonstration, the presentation with a demonstration of one of my favorite easy desserts, jumbo berry upside down cake. And you're going to see me make this cake literally in minutes from start to finish. It's that easy. So, and then you're all going to get a sample of that. So that's what we're going to do today. So let me start off by just talking for a moment about why eat raw desserts. What are some of the benefits of choosing to eat raw food for dessert? And one reason is that, I mean, a lot of people these days are trying to avoid certain ingredients, like white flour, white sugar, saturated fat, dairy products, wheat, gluten. So there's not just people into raw foods, but a lot of people these days are thinking, oh, I can't eat dessert anymore because I really don't want to have those ingredients. Well, the great thing about raw desserts is they're already free of all that. So you don't have to wonder, does it have sugar, does it have flour, is it gluten-free, is it dairy-free? It's already free of all that. So if you bring a raw dessert to a party, even if people aren't interested in raw food, if they just want to be a little bit healthier and they like dessert, they're going to be thrilled to have these desserts at their parties. So that's one reason, is you're going to not have all those ingredients. Now, people really like fat and sugar because, let's be honest, it makes food taste good. So I have good news for you. Raw desserts have fat and sugar. They have a lot of fat and sugar. But it's a different kind of fat and sugar that's a lot easier on your system than the fats and the sugars that are in packaged junk foods or even in traditional homemade desserts. So, for example, there's good fats and there's bad fats. And a lot of desserts, unfortunately, that we're used to eating have the bad fats in them. And some of the bad fats include trans fats, and those are artificially saturated fats. They're in margarine, shortening. They're in a lot of packaged desserts, maybe not homemade necessarily anymore, but packaged snack foods, sweets that you might get often have hydrogenated oils, and those are some of the worst kinds of fats. They can cause heart disease, they can be carcinogenic, they've got no nutritional value, so you really want to avoid those. And then also, even in traditional homemade desserts, a lot of them have butter or saturated fat in the form of butter fat. And that can also cause heart disease and other problems, and a lot of people are trying to avoid saturated fat. So those are some of the bad fats. The good fats, on the other hand, are monounsaturated fats, which are in avocados and in almonds. Also, certain polyunsaturated fats like omega-3s, which you may have heard of being good in fish, but they're also in walnuts. And those are some of the kinds of fats you're going to be using in raw desserts. Avocados, walnuts, some coconut. So you're going to be switching over to the fats that are better for you. And then even with the sugars, too, you're going to be switching over. Traditional desserts are loaded with white sugar, white processed sugar. And white sugar has no nutritional value. It's been stripped of all the vitamins and the minerals and the enzymes, and it's just this highly refined substance that can really cause an extreme spike in your blood sugar level, cause weight problems, all kinds of problems. But with raw desserts, we're switching to sweeteners that are out of fructose instead of sucrose. And fructose is a kind of sugar that has a lower glycemic index, meaning it's not going to spike your blood sugar level as much as just white sugar. So the kinds of sweeteners that you're going to see in raw desserts include agave nectar, which is made, or agave syrup, it's sometimes called. That's made from the agave plant, which is like a cactus plant, and it's mostly fructose. It's got a lower glycemic index than white sugar. You're also going to be using dates and other dried fruits, and also fresh fruits. So you're going to be switching over the fats and the sugars. You're still going to have them, and that's what's going to make the desserts taste just as amazing as the traditional versions, but they're going to be better kinds of fat and sugar. Another traditional ingredient that you'll find in a lot of regular desserts that's not so good for you is white flour. And white flour is just this kind of cooked, devoid of nutrition powder. It's been stripped of all the nutrients, and it can even cause some of the same problems as white sugar. It's so refined, it can just spike your blood sugar level. It doesn't have any nutritional value to it. So it's much better to switch to whole grain flours, but even better than that is just to avoid flour altogether. And that's what you're going to be doing in raw desserts. They're absolutely flour-free. So while we're on the subject of flour, is there anyone in the audience who's sensitive to wheat or to gluten, who's trying to avoid wheat and gluten in their diets? Okay, a number of people. Is there anybody who's lactose intolerant or is just trying to avoid dairy products, sensitive to dairy? Okay, a number of people as well. And that's really increasing just among the mainstream normal people are finding they don't want to eat gluten anymore. They have sensitivities, if not even allergies to it, and they don't want to eat dairy products. So raw desserts are great news for those people because they're dairy-free and they're gluten-free. So these are just some of the reasons to include more raw dessert, to switch out your regular desserts with raw desserts, and to introduce your family and friends to them. Okay, so now I want to get into some things about the art of preparing them, but does anyone have any questions so far about what I've talked about? Yes? Glycemic index? Uh-huh. Okay. Okay. So what the glycemic index is, it's a scientific way of saying how much is it going to spike your blood sugar level up, and so then you crash when it comes down. And different sweeteners have different glycemic index. I'm not a nutritionist or a scientist, so I can't give you exact numbers or anything. But one of the worst is just the more processed it is, the more it's going to spike your blood sugar level. So white sugar is one of the worst. Whereas fructose, as opposed to sucrose, sucrose is the kind of sugar that you'll find in cane sugar, but fructose, it enters your bloodstream more slowly. So you're not going to get that same level of sugar shock. You know, you'll still get some, but you're not going to get the same amount if you just eat straight white sugar. If you eat sweeteners like agave nectar, and fresh fruit is the best because you've got the fiber in there, it's the least processed. Dried fruits maybe next, agave nectar maybe next, but they're all better than white sugar. Okay. All right, another question. Yes? When I say fructose, what am I talking about? Yeah, fructose is just a kind of sugar. There's fructose and there's sucrose and there's other sugars. Yeah, well, you can get refined fructose too. I mean, fructose is just a kind of sugar. And just like sucrose, there's different levels of refinement how you buy it. So it's the kind of sugar that is in fruit already, just naturally. So I'm just talking about using natural sweeteners. Yeah, I'm not talking about white powdered fructose at the store. Yeah, I'm talking about natural ingredients like fresh fruit, agave nectar, and dried fruits that have fructose. Okay, one more question. Yes?
How much of stevia?
Stevia. Okay, stevia is an herb from South America, and it doesn't have won't spike your blood sugar at all, and it gives things a sweet taste. I don't use it in my book because it's something that does require acquiring a taste for. It has a strong licorice-like taste. Even you can get kinds now that don't have that strong of a taste, but it's a little tricky to work with. So if you can't have any sugars of any kind, I encourage you to experiment with it. Elena Love, I know, uses a lot of it. She's another raw food chef that's here at the Expo. But for me, trying to just please the mainstream palate, it's just doesn't work as easily as these other sweeteners I'm going to be using. Okay. All right, so we're going to move now on to the art of preparing some of these dishes. So I want to first talk about setting up your kitchen. And it really is an exercise in simplicity to set up a kitchen for raw food desserts. You really don't need much. A lot of what you're going to be using are the same things you're going to use in a regular kitchen. Mixing bowls, measuring cups, that kind of thing. Beyond that, all you need are 2 knives, just a 7 or 8 inch chef's knife, and a strong, cheap cleaver for opening coconuts, which I'll talk about in a minute. That's all you need, 2 knives. You'll need a blender and a food processor. This is a food processor. And if you want to make the ice creams, you'll need an ice cream maker. You can do everything with just that. The blender and the food processor don't need to be fancy versions. I do have a Cuisinart, which is what this is at home. I have a Vitamix, a high-speed blender at home. I love them. But I tested all the recipes in this book with just a regular KitchenAid blender, costs like $100, and a Hamilton Beach food processor, costs $30 at Target. So if you want to get started more cheaply, you can do that. Ice cream makers are also much easier to use and more affordable than they used to be. In the modern ice cream makers, you don't have any salt, you don't have ice, rock salt, cranking, so don't worry about any of that. You can get a Cuisinart ice cream maker for $40 on Amazon, and all you do is just press the button and turn it on, and that's it, and you're on your way to very traditional tasting ice creams. So that's all the equipment that you need to get started. And in the book, in Raw for Dessert, I give you a list of the equipment in the front, and you'll see it's a very simple list. So if you just, and all those pieces of equipment are going to be up on my website in a couple weeks, so if you just want to shop really quick, it's very simple to get what you need. Okay, then stocking your kitchen with some basic staples as well. There's some basic staples used in many raw food desserts, and the good news is they have a long shelf life. So if you know you want to make dessert either on a regular basis or have what you need to just make one at the last minute without going shopping first, you can just stock your kitchen with the staples that I list in the beginning of the book. They include things like nuts, which are used to replace flour in a lot of raw desserts, and also to make nut milks, which is going to be the base for a lot of ice creams, raw ice creams. So nuts, spices, dried fruits, all that kind of thing. There's a list in the book. You could just get it all at once at the store, and then the only thing you would need to get in order to make any dessert in this book is some fresh fruit or fresh mint, depending on the recipe. So if you just get the staples, you'll be ready at a moment's notice to make any of the desserts in the book. A lot of the desserts only use the staples, the ones that don't have the fresh fruit in them. So if you just have these, you're ready to whip up the dessert just in a minute. And then for some of the other things, you just pick up some fresh fruit. And so you've got, company coming over for dinner in an hour. Any dessert can be made just by getting some fresh fruit. So in the same amount of time it takes you to go to Baskin-Robbins and pick up an ice cream cake, you can pick up strawberries and make fresh, raw, from scratch strawberries and cream ice cream. So it really can be very, very fast. Okay, then after the section on the equipment and the staples that you need, there's a section on tools and techniques. Raw desserts are actually incredibly easy to make. They're much easier in most cases than other raw food dishes, because most raw food dessert recipes, you just put everything in the food processor and press the button, or in the blender and press the button. So it's very easy. There are a few knife skills, not as many as you'll find with other raw food recipes, because most things are blended or processed. But one thing I do in this book is I take you through every single fresh fruit that's used in the book and show you how to cut it attractively. Because those are the knife skills that come into play with desserts, is how do you peel a mango and cut around the pit? How do you peel the bumpy skin off a pineapple and slice it? How do you open a coconut? How do you peel kiwis or oranges so that there's none of the membrane left? So all those kinds of skills with fruits, I go into in the book with the knife skills. So if you read that section, and like I said, a lot of them you don't even need your knife, but for the ones that involve fruit, you just read that section and you'll be ready to go to look like you're a master baker or a pastry chef when you make some of these desserts. All right, any other questions so far about the equipment and the staples that you need before we get into some of the different kinds of recipes? Okay. So when I say the word dessert, dessert means different things to different people. It might mean a rich, fudgy chocolate cake to you or a gooey ice cream sundae. Everyone has their favorite dessert. So what I try to do in this book is to cover the entire spectrum. So every single type of dessert is included. So if you're a chocolate person or a candy person, you have that. If you're an ice cream person, you have that. If you love custards, you have that. So what I want to do now is just give you an overview of some of the different types and the techniques involved in making all the different kinds of desserts before we make our jumbleberry upside down cake. So the first section of recipes in the book is a section called Basics. And this section includes all the different frostings, creams, toppings, and crusts that you'll find in the dessert recipes. And this is actually my favorite chapter in the book, even though these are really simple recipes. And the reason is because basics are very central to making raw dessert easy. Because the way I tried to set up the book is that if you learn how to make these 10 to 15 basic recipes, you can mix and match them to create dozens, if not literally hundreds of different kinds of desserts. So you take your basics, you make them, they store in the refrigerator, the crust, the toppings, the creams. They store in your fridge for a week, sometimes even 2 weeks, and then you've got company coming over, just a quick mix and match, and you're 5 minutes away from a really gourmet dessert. So I'll just give you some examples of that. Raspberry coulis. Coulis is a French word meaning sauce. So the raspberry sauce in the book is a velvety raspberry sauce that's delicious. It can be used in a variety of ways. It's one of the basics. You can drizzle it on top of ice cream for an ice cream sundae. You might drizzle it onto a dessert plate before you put a slice of cake on there to make it plated really beautifully. You add a few extra dates to your raspberry coulis, make it into a thicker raspberry jam, and then you've got the filling for raspberry squares right there. So there's one basic recipe. Another one of my favorite basic recipes is called pastry cream. And this recipe was actually inspired by Elena Love. I was over at her house, and she served me a Bavarian cream parfait once. It was absolutely delicious. And so I got the idea, I want to make a really thick pastry cream like you see in those French pastry tarts. at the bottom, the middle layer. So that's what the pastry cream is in the book, and it's made simply out of coconut. Don't worry, if you're afraid of opening coconuts, it's really easy. I talk you through it in the book, and not every recipe uses coconuts, just maybe 10% of the recipes. But it does replace cream and make things really luxurious. So anyway, the pastry cream is made out of coconut meat, a little coconut oil to firm things up, some vanilla, some agave nectar, and it's just like that pastry cream layer you find in the bottom of fruit tarts. But there's like 10 different things you can do with this pastry cream. So other than putting it in a classic fresh fruit tart, it might be the filling for a banana cream pie, for a cherry custard tart with sliced almonds. It's the filling for that. You can also layer it like a pudding into a parfait, and then you've got summer fruit trifle, and I'll just show you a picture of that here. If you can zoom in, Teresa. Okay, so this summer fruit trifle, there you've got pastry cream layered with shortbread crust, which is another staple that's used in 10 different ways, and fresh berries. So you've got your cream and your crust made, and actually this dessert over here, which I'll talk about more later, this classic fresh fruit tart, is the exact same ingredients as the trifle. It's just plated differently, and then you have a different dessert. So you've got crust, cream, and fruit, but depending on the way you present it, it's a totally different dessert. So you're starting to get the idea of how the basics, you just mix and match them, and you've got all these different desserts. Okay, so the pastry cream. Other thing you can do with it, if you don't care about being strictly raw, which when it comes to dessert, I don't, you just brulee the top, and you've got creme brulee. Put a little whole cane sugar on the top of your pastry cream, torch it, you've got creme brulee. It's not raw, but it's mostly raw. So anyway, so the pastry cream can be used in a lot of different ways. Another one of my favorite basics to mix and match is the chocolate ganache. And you can see a picture of that on the cover here on this ice cream sundae here, chocolate ganache. And it's this oozy, thick fudge sauce that you can use as a frosting, because once it's chilled, it hardens, so it can be a frosting. If you warm it up, you basically, if you make it fresh, you don't need to warm it because it's already liquid, but if you put it in the fridge for a while, it'll firm up. So if you want to warm it up, you just heat up a saucepan with a couple inches of water and put your bowl of ganache in there, and it'll warm up to body temperature. And then it's a liquid that you can use as a hot fudge sauce or as a fondue. And it's really like a traditional fudge sauce. It's very thick and gooey, so when you put it on the ice cream, like magic shell, it kind of congeals a little bit. So it's a really nice fudge sauce. Or it can be a fondue, it can be a frosting. So all the basics in the basic section are like that. Make them, this stores for 2 weeks in your fridge at least. You make them, you store them, and then you just mix and match, and you're a few minutes away from any kind of amazing dessert. Okay. Any questions so far on the basics? Yes? Uh-huh. This chocolate ganache sauce is made out of coconut oil, agave nectar, and cocoa. And that's it. Yes. Oh, okay, yes, there's no avocado in this particular sauce. Okay. Anything else about the basics? All right, so the next section in here is on fresh fruit desserts. And I love fresh fruit desserts because I think that's where really raw food's forte. You've got that unadulterated, pure, fresh taste of fruit. You don't need to do a lot to it. And it can still be extremely simple and elegant. One of my favorite fruit desserts in the book literally has only 2 ingredients, strawberry soup. And you can just plate it, strawberries and agave nectar, you blend it together, and it's a thick soup, and you can plate it in a beautiful soup plate. You can drizzle it with cashew cream. You can garnish it with berries. You can blend in cashews into it, and you've got cream of strawberry soup. By the way, every recipe in here has like at least 1, if not 2 or 3 variations. So, you change up one thing, and you've got a whole different recipe. Blueberry soup, blackberry soup, cream of strawberry soup, whatever. Mango carpaccio is another one of my favorite elegant fruit desserts. Carpaccio is an Italian term that means sliced really thin, and usually it refers to meats or fish, but there's a lot of dessert carpaccios springing up in restaurants. And you just slice mangoes ultra thin, and you macerate them, which is a word that just means marinate in some kind of sweetener and acid like lemon juice that softens fruits. You macerate the thin mango slices in agave nectar and lemon juice and cinnamon. And they get really soft, and you just fan them out on a plate, and you can top it with a little bit of thinly sliced kiwi and strawberries, and you can even have that for breakfast. So I love these fruit desserts because they make a great breakfast as well. Another fruit dessert I like in the book a lot is ambrosia, and that's a dessert you may be familiar with from women's magazines of the 1950s, but it's a delicious dessert made out of oranges and coconut and bananas, and I sweeten it with agave nectar, and it's absolutely lovely. A really great kid-friendly fruit dessert in the book is caramel apple stacks. And the way you make that is you layer thin slices of apple. And apples are so nutritious, and I think desserts are a great way to get kids really excited about fruit. And there's a lot of apple desserts in the book. But this caramel apple stacks, you layer these thin slices of apples alternating with a caramel sauce, which is another basic in the book. The caramel sauce is made out of cashew butter and agave nectar and vanilla. And you keep layering it and top it with some cashew cream. You can eat that with a knife and a fork. There's a lot of different things you can do with a caramel sauce, and I'll get into that in a little bit as well. So that's the section on fruit desserts. They're really, really quick and easy. Okay, how many people like ice cream? Everybody, great. Okay, most people. I love ice cream, and that was one of the hardest things for me to try to give up with dairy products because I love the taste of traditional ice cream. And a lot of raw ice creams were not cutting it for me. And this section took me the longest to test. It took me about 2 months making hundreds of kinds of ice creams to finally hit on the perfect formula. And I have done it. And so the ice creams in this dessert book they taste like Haagen-Dazs. I mean, they're really, really amazing. But let me just first start off talking about sorbets first. I actually really love sorbet too. Sorbet is not as popular in America as it is in Europe, but sorbet can be incredibly elegant and delicious. And it's so simple. Making a raw sorbet has only fresh fruit and agave nectar. You blend the two together, you put it in your ice cream maker, that's it. It's really easy, and they taste just like traditional sorbets. And I actually love sorbets as served as counterpoints to rich desserts. I mean, this dessert's great, you know, the vanilla ice cream on the brownie, but if you want to be more elegant or sophisticated, try some raspberry sorbet on your brownie or with your chocolate cake. Sorbets really make a wonderful counterpoint to rich desserts. Try some grape sorbet with cheesecake. That's a wonderful combination because you've got that kind of puckering grape taste to cut the richness of the cheesecake. So in this book, you've got grape sorbet, strawberry sorbet. There's even a chocolate sorbet in here, which I love. I love chocolate ice cream too, but chocolate sorbet is great because you don't have any creaminess cutting the flavor of the chocolate intensity. It's just intense chocolate, and that's it. So there's a lot of sorbets in here. And there's also granitas. A granita is an Italian ice, and I like to think of it as a grown-up slushie. And I love granitas on a hot summer day. There's a picture here, Teresa, if you can zoom in on it. This grapefruit granita, you can make it out of lemon too, and there's an orange one here too. And it's basically just fruit juice and agave nectar. And the traditional way of making granita is so complicated. You've got to freeze it, and every 10 minutes you've got to stir it, and it's just really complicated. This granita, all you do is you freeze it in ice cube trays, and you pop your frozen fruit cubes into the food processor and pulse it, and that's it. And you've got this shaved Italian ice that's really, really great on a hot summer day. But if you like more creamy traditional ice creams, you can absolutely do that in this book. There's a lot of flavors for you. And basically what you do is you start out with a nut milk as the base. And you make a nut milk, for example, almond milk. All you do is you soak almonds and you blend it with water and you strain it. And then you've got almond milk. And that's the base for most of the raw, creamy ice creams. So the Brazil nut vanilla ice cream, which you can see on the cover here, it's made with a base of actually Brazil nut milks. They have a slightly richer flavor than almond milk. And then you put it in your blender and you just add your flavoring. So in this case, it's agave nectar, vanilla, and I add a little bit of cashew just to make it a little richer and creamier. The reason it took me so long to test these is that the proportion of nut milk to cashew has to be exact for it to have the perfect ice cream consistency. So these really are creamy. So then you blend it all together and you just chill it so it's cold by the time it goes into your ice cream maker. And you just put it in the ice cream maker, press the on button, and in 20 minutes you've got Brazil nut vanilla ice cream. And this will keep in your freezer for a week. So you can make a different flavor of ice cream every day of the week and then have all these ice creams to mix and match for sundaes. So just to show you some of these sundaes that are possible. Okay. A second here. Here we go. All right, so you can zoom in on this, Teresa. Here we've got a blackberry sundae, and there you've got Brazil nut vanilla ice cream mixed with a blackberry sorbet and with a blackberry coulis or blackberry sauce and some fresh blackberries on top of it. I love mixing ice cream and sorbet together. I think they make really interesting sundaes. Here you've got a banana split, just a classic one with strawberry, chocolate, and vanilla ice cream. And the chocolate ganache on there again with some bananas and some chopped nuts. So you can really do a lot with the sundaes, all different kinds of sundaes. And if you like different flavors of ice cream, and of course this sundae is great for kids' parties where you don't want the kids to have the dairy and the wheat or whatever. All kids and adults love brownie sundaes. So you've just got a brownie with vanilla ice cream and chocolate sauce on top. Really simple and delicious. But you can vary the flavors of ice cream depending on what you like. There's many different flavors in the book. If you like chocolate, you just add your cocoa or your raw cacao to your vanilla ice cream base. If you like fruit ice cream, like strawberry ice cream, you just thinly slice strawberries, toss it in some agave nectar, mix that in. Coffee ice cream is my favorite. It's not raw, but I made a little exception there because I just love it. And basically all you do there is you use freshly brewed coffee instead of water when you're making your almond milk. And you just make it the same way as the vanilla ice cream, but with coffee instead of water, and it tastes like Haagen-Dazs coffee ice cream. It's really good. Pistachio ice cream, you make pistachio milk instead of almond milk. So there's all these different variations you can do to have all your favorite flavors. Okay, any questions about ice cream so far? All right, moving on to cakes, cookies, and bars. And this is a welcome section to people who have gluten intolerances because most cakes have flour and sugar and all that in there. But raw cakes, and you can make any kind of cookie, a drop cookie, a bar cookie, a cake, and all these cakes and cookies are made out of nuts, dried coconut, and dates. And when you combine them in the right way, you get the right kind of texture, and you don't need to use flour or sugar. And traditional baking is very difficult. I was never that good at baking, even though I've loved to cook my whole life. I never really had a lot of patience for traditional baking because it's very scientific. If you've ever had a really dry piece of cake or a brownie that just crumbles when you try to eat it, you really have to be very exact. And even with baked vegan desserts, if you're trying to avoid dairy, you have to be it's even harder. The baking is even harder with vegan desserts without the dairy and the eggs to make them turn out right. But with raw desserts, you can be a terrible baker. It doesn't matter. And they're all going to turn out amazingly well. So the chocolate cake, I'll just show you a couple pictures of cake in here that you can make. This chocolate cake is really fudgy and gooey, and it's topped here with the chocolate ganache frosting that I mentioned earlier. Pineapple upside down cake, I'm going to make you a berry upside down cake in just a second, so you'll see the same technique. But here you've got a pineapple upside down cake with layers of shortbread crust. That's one of the basics. And you have the stores in your refrigerator for at least 3 months. You can have that on hand. Layered with sliced pineapple, but you can use any fruit that you want. I'm going to show you this in a minute. There's a lot of accompaniments you can use with this cake. It's great with coconut ice cream on top. It's great with avocado creme anglaise, which is a sweet green cream you can drizzle on top. It's delicious and it looks pretty. This caramel sauce, that's what it's plated with here. The caramel sauce I mentioned, made out of cashew butter and agave nectar. There are so many things you can do with this caramel sauce, and it lasts for 2 weeks in your fridge, so you might want to make a big batch. You can serve it with the pineapple upside down cake. It's the filling of the caramel apple stacks. If you make an ice cream sundae, you can top the ice cream with the chocolate ganache and with the caramel sauce, and you've got an ice cream sundae. It's in banana caramel crumble, another dessert in the book where you mash together bananas, caramel sauce, and shortbread crust and top it with some more shortbread crust. I could go on and on, but there's a lot you can do with the caramel sauce. Okay, so pies and tarts, moving on to pies and tarts. And regular baked pie crusts are usually really, really difficult if you've ever tried to do it. You've got to use ice water, and the butter has to be chilled just right, and you can't overwork the dough or it's going to get tough. And then you've got to roll it out, and then you're probably overworking the dough when you're rolling it out, and you can't get a perfect circle. And then you've got to bake it, and it can burn, and if some of the fruit from your pie drips in the oven, it can catch fire. So, I mean, there's just a lot of problems with traditional pies. But raw pie crusts are just perfection, and you're safe rather than sorry on so many levels when you make a raw pie crust. And you don't need to roll it out. You just press it into the pan. It's 2 minutes in the food processor. It's so easy. And tarts may look fancier than pies, but they're actually easier to make in some ways because the pan is already fluted, so you don't need to shape it. You just press it right into the pan. So that picture where was that picture of that classic fresh fruit tart? Here we go. Okay, so there's your shortbread crust. It just looks like a professional tart. One of my favorite pies is this pumpkin pie, and there you've got a graham crust made out of pecans, and the filling is made out of carrot and avocado. And then it's topped with a cashew cream lattice top. So again, it looks complicated, but the crust can be made ahead, keeps for 3 months. The cashew cream keeps for 2 weeks. You learn how to make these basics, and it's just mix and match to have these elegant desserts. Okay, so creamy desserts. Now, like me, if you love to wrap your tongue around a spoon of creamy pudding or custard, but you don't want to have dairy products, the creamy dessert section is for you. And these are some of my favorites. I love pot de crème. That's a French word meaning pot of cream, and there's a chocolate pot de crème in here that's so thick. It's thicker and richer than a mousse or a pudding, and it's just velvety. And it's made out of avocado with a little coconut oil to firm it up, chocolate, and you can top it with vanilla cashew cream. You can go for a double whammy, top it with chocolate cashew cream. I actually like it served in a shot glass, topped with a chocolate truffle. So there's a lot of different ways that you can plate it. Another one of my favorite creamy desserts is the creme brulee I mentioned. Pastry cream, put a little whole cane sugar on top, brulee it, you've got creme brulee. Kheer, which is an Indian rice pudding, is one of my absolute favorites. And there you're using fresh coconut as the milky base. You blend that, and that's your milk and your cream. And you use dried coconut instead of rice. And once it's sitting in the fresh coconut, it plumps up. It looks and tastes just like rice. And then you add your traditional Indian flavors, golden raisins, cardamom, pistachio. You can put a little rose water, and it's just like Indian rice pudding. So the creamy dessert section is great. Okay, and then the last section in the book is candy, and this is one of my favorite sections because traditional candies are so bad for you. You've got trans fats; they usually have hydrogenated fats. If you get like a Snickers or something, it's got a hydrogenated oil. They've got corn syrup in them. They usually have preservatives. And if you've ever tried to make your own candy, if you want to go that route instead of getting the packaged stuff, it's incredibly difficult. You've got to temper the chocolate, boil the caramel to the softball stage. You can get third-degree burns from hot sugar. It's really kind of a nightmare. But raw candies are so easy. You just have a blender or food processor, and it's like 5 minutes. And I love to serve these at parties because they're like finger food. We'll just zoom in on this. I'll show you the spread of candies. You've got a cashew freezer fudge here. You've got a chocolate truffle. You've got a stuffed date with nuts and orange zest. And then here's one of my favorites, chocolate candy cups. You've got this chocolate candy studded with dried fruits and nuts. Tastes like a Cadbury bar. So you can make a whole spread of these different chocolate candies. All right, any questions so far? You guys ready to see the world's fastest upside-down cake? Yeah. Okay, great. All right. So those are some of the secrets of raw food desserts, and you can see it's not weird, it's not strange, it's not hard. It's just all your favorite traditional recipes with just a few modernized twists. Okay, so now we're going to make this jumbleberry upside-down cake. And making a traditional upside-down cake is a challenge for even experienced bakers because you've got to caramelize the fruit, you've got to layer it in the pan, you've got to make sure you don't burn the fruit, then you've got to invert it, and sometimes it sticks to the pan. It is not easy to make a traditional upside-down cake. The raw version looks just as beautiful, and you don't have the ordeal of baking it all. So I'm going to start off making the shortbread crust, which is one of my basic recipes used in a lot of the cakes and the pies, tarts, cookies, crisps, all of that. And we're going to use a food processor. I'm going to be using walnuts and a pinch of salt. It might surprise you to see a pinch of salt in desserts, but salt actually brings out sweetness. So you'll see a pinch of salt in most of these desserts. Okay, so we're going to add some salt, all right? And then I'm going to add some dried coconut, which is also going to take the place of flour. And we're just going to go ahead and process that until it resembles a coarse flour. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so we've got our flour, and now I'm going to add some dates, which is a kind of dried fruit. These are medjool dates, which are particularly large and soft and sweet, and they're going to both sweeten the cake and they're going to bind everything together. Okay, so let's start off with that. And I'm just going to process that to incorporate the dates. Making a little noise here. All right, let's take a look at that. And I'm making a larger amount than the recipe in the book, just so I have enough for all of you. I'm going to add the rest of the dates. By the way, the cakes in my book, I recommend using 6-inch cake pans. This is a 9-inch cake pan because I want to make enough for samples for everybody. But I recommend using those smaller pans, and you can just get them on Amazon or in a cookware store because dessert ingredients are a little more expensive, and you don't necessarily need a huge cake unless you're making it for a party. And I don't like to have a really thin cake. I want to have one that's tall and thick and impressive looking. So I use the smaller cake pans. So all the recipes are geared toward that amount. Of course, you could double them and use a bigger cake pan. But you can just use a small one and still have a very tall, impressive looking cake without using a lot of ingredients and spending a lot of money. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish processing this. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and prepare the berries. So I've got some raspberries, blueberries. You can use any berries that are in season, blackberries, whatever. Raspberries, blueberries, some sliced strawberries. That takes a minute. If you don't want to take the time to slice strawberries, just use other berries. Use blackberries or whatever. Okay, so we've got our berries in there. And then I'm going to macerate them, which means soften them with a little bit of agave nectar, that natural sweetener. So we'll add that, and we're just going to give that a toss. And they're going to get really, really juicy and sweet. So you don't need to worry about the sugar and the burning and the caramelizing and all that. That's where the agave nectar comes in. So we'll just give this a toss. Doesn't that look pretty? I mean, I just love, that's why it's called jumbo berry upside down cake, because you've got a mixture of berries. But you can use any fruit you want. You saw the picture of the pineapple upside down cake. You can do that. Those are the two recipes I've got in the book, but you could use anything. You could use plums, you could use mango, whatever you want for an upside down cake. Okay, so I can see these berries are already really softening and getting nice and juicy. Okay. All right, so we are ready to assemble this cake now. Okay. So I'm using a 9-inch cake pan. As I said, the recipes in my book call for a 6-inch pan, but I'm just making a larger version of this, so we have samples for everybody. And what I've done, and this is just a regular cake pan, not a springform pan or whatever. I do use a springform pan in the book for the cheesecakes so that you can unmold them. But this is just a regular cake pan. And what I've done is I've lined it with a round of parchment paper, and that's going to allow us to invert the cake and turn it head over heels and turn it right side up or upside down or whatever. So this parchment paper, what you do is you just trace the pan with a pencil and then cut it out, and you've got your parchment round there. Okay, so now we're going to start layering. So the first layer is going to be the berries, because that's what we want to have on the top when we invert it. So let me just add half of these berries here. Okay. And I'm just going to spread that around, get that all pressed down and nice and compact. And a few more here. Okay. There we go. So you want to just get all that even and compacted down. And now we're going to add half of the shortbread crust mixture, and that's going to be our cake. We go ahead and do that. Isn't this easier than making a baked upside down cake? Okay, so add half of this. All right. Okay, and then I'm just going to press that down really firmly so that it the berries get embedded on there when we invert it. So we're going to press that down. You can use a spatula or whatever. It's just easier for me to use my hands. So I'm going to press that down really firmly. By the way, afterwards, I'm going to be signing books right downstairs in front of the marketplace, both my dessert book and I've got Raw Food Made Easy as well. So if you'd like, I can sign it for you, or if you want me to sign it for a friend. These make great gifts, especially with the holidays coming up. I'd be happy to do that. Okay, so we've got that all pressed down really, really firmly. And now I'm going to go ahead and add the middle layer of the fruit. Okay. So I hope you guys are getting the idea. I know some of you are already into raw food, but that it really, it doesn't have to be a mysterious thing. It can be the most natural thing in the world to prepare food this way. All right, so we've got that middle layer. Doesn't this look beautiful? That middle layer of berries. Okay. And now we're going to put the final layer of crust on top. All right. So we'll just pack that down really well. Now let's spread out. My website, by the way, if you want more recipes, if you get the book, you'll have all the recipes, but there's a lot of recipes up on the website as well if you want to tell your friends. It's www.learnrawfood.com. And afterwards, when we're handing out samples, maybe you could do that now, just pass around that sheet of paper and that pen. If you want to be on my email list, you can always just go to my website and sign up. But if you want to just write your name and email there, I can let you know when there's upcoming events, and I have a newsletter with recipes and that kind of stuff. Okay, so we are now ready to unmold this cake. All right. Now, normally, I would chill this in the fridge for 30 minutes just to let it set up and get really hard and firm. It's still going to work fine without doing that. But just, that's what the recipe calls for, just so it gets really firm. And then once we unmold it, this can stay moist and good in your fridge for a couple days. All right, so now we're going to unmold. Okay. So I'm just going to run a knife along the edge, loosen the edge there. And like I said, once you chill it, see, it's breaking a little. It's okay. But it'll be really firm once you chill this. Okay. So we'll loosen the edge. No, you chill it now. And that's in the recipe. You chill it now for 30 minutes, up to 2 hours, and that's going to get this really firm, so it just unmolds totally cleanly. So if you see a few crumbles, that's just why, because we're not taking the time to do that. Okay, so you loosen the edge. Okay. All right, and then we're going to just put the plate on top. Let's hope this works. Put the plate on top, and we're going to invert it. Okay. Give this a little wiggle. I think it's working. Okay. And then we're going to take off the parchment. And you've got a jumbo berry upside down cake. Everybody see that? Okay. Yeah, it worked. All right, thank you so much, everyone. So my assistants are going to start sampling this out. And while they're doing that, I can take some time for some questions. So does anybody have any questions? Yes? Any replacement? You mean fresh coconut or dried? For the fresh coconut. Okay. In some cases, instead of fresh coconut, is that just because you don't want to deal with opening them, or you don't? Okay. Okay. Sorry, what? You can't stand coconut. Okay, okay. Well, first of all, a lot of the recipes don't have coconut, so you've got that. For fresh coconut, you can usually replace avocado in a lot of cases, and it will be green, so just be aware of that. The only reason I use fresh coconut instead of avocado is to make it white, so you could just use avocado. In my first book, Raw Food Made Easy, there's nothing with fresh coconut at all in the whole book, because I know it's not as accessible to people. And then with dried coconut, you could just use ground almonds instead of dried coconut. Yeah. Okay, yes?
In your book,
uh-huh. A flan or a what? No bûche de Noël. That's a little complicated for me. But flan, actually, yes, there's a pumpkin flan in the book. And the picture of the pumpkin pie I showed you, it's a variation on that. And there's a creme brulee as well, which is similar to flan. Okay, yes? Why don't I use a springform pan for this? Well, this is an upside down cake, meaning we have to get that berry layer on top. So with the springform pan, you never invert it. You just take off the sides. So that's what you use for cheesecake. Yeah, okay. Uh-huh. I don't use Irish moss in the book. I'm trying to keep it as easy and accessible for people as possible, so coconut is as hard as I get. Okay, anything else? Yes. Uh-huh. Okay, coconut oil. Coconut oil is one of the ingredients I use to firm things in the book in certain recipes. I just use regular extra virgin coconut oil. The unscented kind has been refined, so I don't use that. There's no overwhelming coconut taste in these recipes because I'm just using a very small amount to firm things. I'm not using it as the main ingredient. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get those. How are the samples, the front row? People who got them so far? Great, great, great. Yes, one more question. Okay, good. Well, I hope to see some of you downstairs. We're passing around this sign-in sheet, so if you want to sign up for that, just wait or whatever, and you'll get your sample. I'll be downstairs in a few minutes signing books. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much for coming. I hope this inspires you to make some simple and easy raw desserts. Thank you very much.